Hi everyone. This video is going to go over how to draw eyes, the basics, and also talk about style. Feel free to draw along with me once again. I decided to only do digital painting in this demo because honestly the rules work for both. If anyone wants to see me do a traditional eye, I can record that, just let me know. We are going to look at 3 different eyeballs. The first one is a realistic one. I'm using this one to basically show you the basics of every shape and talk about different parts of the eye. Let's break eyes down like we do everything else. Shapes. They are ovals and circles. I always start off with drawing the top eyelid and creating a sort of almond shape. The eyeball is a ball. It's a circle. And this includes the entirety of the white part. The iris is the colored part of the eye, and this is a simple circle. The pupil is the black part that sits inside the iris, again, a circle, sometimes an oval depending on the character. Even when the iris and the pupils are moving, remember that they are still circles. Eyelashes are the funnest part to draw, in my opinion. No matter what your style is, how simple you make the eyelashes, they're just fun to show off the shape of the eye. You will follow the eye shape in the eyelids to draw the eyelashes. They are not straight up or down, they have curves to them, they group together, they change directions. This is a very important thing to remember to get your eyes to look as three-dimensional as possible. Even if you're drawing in an anime style, remembering to follow the curves will make your artwork look like the pros. Now, with coloring eyes, first off, overall, I do not like coloring on plain white canvases. I recommend to tint your canvas. Secondly, do not use white for the base color of the eye. Use an off-white. I lean towards pink tinted whites. You can use any color that fits your color scheme. Um, Focusing on what color you have picked, though, like if you're on the blue or the green, it will change your off white. It will be, you know, pointed towards that color. So remember that. I use a painterly approach and mix in a range of pinks, yellows, and a bit of pure white. But including these colors in the mix of your off white, you have to pay attention and how much you include. If you include too much yellow, the eye will look sick. If you include too much pink, it will blend in with the skin, and you don't want to use too much white because, like I said before, you don't want to use pure white because it takes away from using lights and makes your eye look too flat. Inside the iris, you'll choose whatever color the subject has. The pupil will most likely be a dark shade, like a black, unless you're specifically going for a color scheme. Shades, lighting, and reflections will always improve your artwork. For the shading, I follow the form of the eyelashes. Basically, think the eyelashes are shading your eyes, but you will have to think about environment as well. Where is the light coming from? What are they looking at? This will change the shading and reflection. Once you do that, I use a white for the lighting and reflection, and the opacity of this white will differ per subject and environment. You will see that per example as well. For the waterline, I use a light pink. The above eyelid will depend on skin tone. So again, think of how much it folds and always think about it being a three-dimensional shape, following the eye shape. The inside corner of the eye, I use a darker pink and put a smidge of red in it to show the difference. Drawing the reflections and including lights are so important. Use different tones for the iris color you choose. I will talk about how I do tones when I draw my own style. Let's talk about style. When you're a beginner artist, do not get stuck in having a style. The worst thing to do is to corner yourself into saying, well, this is just this way because of my style. You will lose out on a lot of learning if you stick to styles too early on. Now draw and let your inspirations mash into a style. Studying the pros and seeing what you like about their work. Take pieces of their puzzle to create your own picture. Let's look at some pros and study how they do their eyes and why style and intention is important. The first example we look at is Junji Ito, someone I truly admire in style and the perfect example at using eyes for expression. What is your intention with your art piece? Is it to show an emotion? Is it to symbolize something? Intention in styles and drawing is so important per piece to figure out how you're going to be drawing the subject. Let's take a look at this artwork. He doesn't use colors. He only uses black and white. He also uses his lines and dots to show shades, dimensions, movements, and emotion. He also uses shapes and exaggerations. Her eyes are wide, and everything is still following the rules, but you can see the fear because of how much the eyes are open. But notice that this is still an almond shape. He also remembers to show that the eyeball is a ball through his dot shading. We all can tell she's looking slightly to the side by the shape of the eyes bulging out. The eyelashes, there are fewer and they're shorter, but he wants the overall feel of the eye to focus on the emotion coming from it. So he doesn't use any of the pretty add-ons. You're not supposed to look at how pretty she is. You're supposed to look how scared she is. I learned a lot through studying Junji Ito, and his influence definitely shows in my pieces. The second pro we are looking at is Sam Does Art. He simplifies the eye a bit, but in a way you don't really notice. Also, an added note, I know Sam does his stuff on one layer, and I used a ton of layers, but ignore that. Same rules, almond shape, circles, all the good stuff. However, he simplifies. For instance, the eyelashes. He doesn't draw each eyelash separately, he grouped them. Now let's think about his intention of this art piece. What does he want you to focus on? Sam paints very soft and usually uses a lot of warm tones. He wants your focus on the character that is placed in his backgrounds. What is her expression? It brings you in. Is she in deep thought? Is she bored? Maybe both. Her eyes feel really distant. You are met with this subject in a specific passing moment. He still includes the waterline, but again, simplifies it. He doesn't put any real focus on the inside point of the eye. He focuses on the overall eye. Also notice that the eyelid and the shading adds an extra dimension to the shape. Now we will talk about how I create my eyes. I have an overall style, but I will say sometimes my process will be different depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. I love eyes. I love using eyes to get my stories across. Again, almond shape and circles. I love utilizing eyelashes. I think they're really pretty. I follow the curve for the direction, and I do kind of draw them separately, but they end up kind of grouping together to make one shape, kind of like Sam's. So I draw the eyelid and set where I want the subject to be looking at, the iris and the pupil. To be honest, I was starting to get tired, so instead of using a sketch layer and then lining it, I sketched it and just cleaned up the sketch, which is valid. Remember that you have that option if you're a digital artist. I use the waterline for my bottom lashes, and I use Junji Ito's dot shading method to show the shape of the eyeballs. I personally like using a lighter color for line work. This is for all my artwork. Normally, I use a blue or a purple, and then I add black accents to push the parts that are supposed to be dark. Like here, I line the eyelashes in black and the iris and the pupil in black. I think this makes the overall painting softer and less harsh. You also get a really nice difference, like in the lashes, for example. Some blue ones pop out and it feels more alive, in my opinion. As for the pupil shape, I like to create them with lines instead of a plain dot. It makes them feel foggier, and this is just something I like to use for story and pushing emotions. Again, we use an off white. I utilize a dark pink and blend it in with the off white to make a nice rounded feeling of the eyeball. Keep in mind, it is a ball, so think of it as one. I add a little yellow, but always make sure you never go overboard with any of these tones. I chose to do a blue eye. The inside of the iris is a big part of your style. You can go real simple, like I do. You can kind of do more of a Junji Ito simple, or you can go real detailed. You can also do real cutesy, like anime. This is all through preference and again intention of the piece. I went simple and I used an arch of light color on the bottom, leaving the middle closer to a base blue and going darker at the top, sort of like a sunset type of gradient. I like to have the iris have its own shading and then have the eyeball shading put on top of that to kind of create a neat difference. Again, I follow the eyelashes and the shape of the eye to figure out where the shading goes. I use a light pink for the waterline and a contour of pinks on the top and a darker pink in the corner of the eye with a smidge of red. Add your lights and reflections to really make it feel dimensional. I always do my lights last. This all depends on you. I like to do it last because it kind of feels like that finish line. One note that I didn't include in my drawing demo is if you want to add lighter eyelashes to create a value of your eyelashes, like not using black only and showing the roundness, especially if you're wanting to do realistic eyes, I kind of stick to just the lighter line color and then the black because that would take me years. Now, for this week's practice, I want you to pick two styles that you find inspirational and one realistic eye and draw all three, kind of like what I did in this video, just to practice the shapes and kind of learn the difference of styles. And if you participated in drawing with me through the video, or if you participate in the practice, tag me on social media, hashtag DAT Art School, or put it in my Discord. You can also tag me at T Kalala. Thanks.